There's a moment when you check your bank account and it hits zero. Not low, not tight, zero. And in that moment, money isn't a number anymore. It's fear, it's pressure, it's survival. But fast forward a few years later, same person, same world, different number. And suddenly, money feels different. You think differently. You decide differently. You even look at other people's money differently. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Saving money doesn't just change your bank account, it rewires your mind. And once that shift begins, you can never go back. 1. Level 0. Survival mode. At 0, you don't think about investing. You don't think about wealth. You think about one thing. Will this payment go through? Your mind isn't planning the future, it's negotiating the present. Every decision feels urgent. Every expense feels heavier than it should. Even small amounts start to feel big. You don't choose what's best, you choose what's possible. And that difference quietly shapes your life. Because when money is low, your attention narrows. You stop seeing opportunities, you start seeing risks. You hesitate more, you delay decisions, you avoid anything uncertain. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is trying to protect you. This is survival mode. And the longer you stay here, the more it rewires how you think. You begin to believe things that feel true but aren't permanent. Money disappears fast. I can't get ahead. No matter what I do, it's not enough. These thoughts don't feel like fear anymore. They feel like reality. And that's where it becomes dangerous. Because now, it's not just your situation holding you back. It's your identity. You start acting like someone who's always behind, always catching up, always one step away from falling. And without realizing it, you build habits that keep you exactly there. Avoiding risk, avoiding growth, avoiding change. That's why most people never escape this level. Not because they lack money, but because they've adapted to living without it. And once survival becomes normal, leaving it feels unfamiliar, even when the opportunity is right in front of you. 2. The first buffer. $1,000 to $5,000. Breathing room. Then one day, something shifts. You check your account, and for the first time in a long time, it's not empty. You've got a little buffer. Not enough to change your life, but enough to change your state of mind. And that's where everything begins. Because suddenly, you can breathe. You're not calculating every second. You're not panicking over every notification. There's space. And in that space, something powerful happens. You stop reacting and start thinking. You pause before spending. You question your choices. You begin to ask, do I really need this? For the first time, money gives you something more valuable than itself. Time. Time to decide. Time to think. Time to step back. And time changes how you see everything. Because now, you're not just surviving the system, you're observing it. You start noticing patterns, where your money goes, what triggers your spending, how small habits quietly drain you. You become aware. And awareness is the first real form of control. But here's the part no one talks about. This level feels safe, comfortable, even stable. And that comfort can become a trap because the urgency is gone, but the vision isn't clear yet. So people settle. They stop pushing. They stop building. They tell themselves, I'm doing okay now. And that's where growth slows down, because temporary safety starts to feel like success. But it's not. It's just the first step. And if you stay here too long, you risk building a life that feels secure, but never truly moves forward. 3. $10,000 to $50,000. Control. At this level, something quiet begins to change. Fear doesn't disappear, but it loses its grip. It's no longer loud, no longer constant. It becomes background noise. Bills don't scare you anymore. You don't check your account before every transaction. Emergencies still happen, but they don't break you. They don't reset your life. And that alone changes how you move through the world. Because now your mindset shifts again. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Should I?" That one question is the beginning of control. Because money is no longer controlling your decisions. You're controlling where money goes. You're assigning purpose. You're thinking in direction, not reaction. And with that shift comes clarity, a different kind of awareness. You start noticing things you couldn't see before, how people spend without thinking, how quickly lifestyles expand the moment income increases, how debt quietly becomes normal, car upgrades, subscriptions, small expenses that repeat until they become permanent. And now, it doesn't make sense anymore, because you've stepped outside the cycle. You're no longer inside it. You're observing it, almost like watching a system you used to be trapped in. But here's the deeper shift. You realize that control isn't about having more money. It's about having distance from pressure, the ability to choose instead of react. And once you feel that, even briefly, you don't want to lose it. So your behavior changes. You become more intentional, more selective, more aware of long-term consequences. Because now you understand, money isn't just something you use, it's something you direct. And in this zone, for the first time, your life starts moving by design, not by default. 4. The shift. $100,000 plus. Detachment. This is where everything changes, not just financially, but mentally. Because at this level, money stops being emotional. It stops triggering fear. It stops creating urgency. It becomes neutral. And once that happens, you begin to see it differently. You don't chase money anymore. You don't run after every opportunity. You don't say yes just because it pays more. Instead, you position yourself around it. You think in terms of leverage, systems, timing. You ask, does this align with where I'm going? Not, how much does this pay? Because now, opportunities matter more than paychecks. Time matters more than status. Freedom matters more than appearance. And that shift changes your entire behavior. But here's the uncomfortable truth. As your mindset evolves, your environment starts to feel different. You begin to feel disconnected. Not because you're better, but because you're thinking differently. Because while most people are focused on earning more, spending more, showing more, you're focused on keeping what you earn, growing what you keep, protecting what you grow. And those priorities don't always match the people around you. Conversations change, decisions change, even relationships can feel different. Because the gap isn't financial, it's psychological. You're no longer playing the same game. You're no longer chasing validation through money. You're building control through it. And that difference creates distance. Not always visible, but always present. Because once you detach from money emotionally, you stop reacting like everyone else. You become selective. You become patient. You become strategic. And in a world driven by impulse, that kind of thinking quietly sets you apart. Not louder, not flashier, but far more powerful. 5. The realization. It was never about money. At every level, you told yourself the same story. Once I reach the next number, everything will change. More savings, more comfort, more control. And in some ways, it does, but not in the way you imagined. Because the real shift isn't happening in your bank account. It's happening in your mind. Slowly, quietly, without you even noticing. Because money doesn't just give you options. It reveals you. Your patterns, your habits, your fears, the way you react under pressure, the way you behave when things feel safe. At 0, you learned survival. At your first buffer, you learned awareness. At stability, you learned control. And at higher levels, you learned detachment. But underneath all of that, you were becoming someone else. Someone who thinks differently. Someone who sees differently. Someone who chooses differently. And that's the part no one talks about. Because the number was never the destination. It was just a trigger. A trigger for growth. A trigger for awareness. A trigger for change. And eventually, you reach a point where you realize you're not chasing money anymore. You're chasing something deeper. Control over your time. The ability to say no without fear. Freedom in your decisions. The power to choose direction without pressure. Peace in your mind. No constant stress. No constant noise. Just clarity. And once you feel that, even for a moment, you understand something most people never do. Savings wasn't the goal. It was the path. A path that slowly transformed how you think, how you act, and ultimately, who you become. Because in the end, the biggest return on money isn't financial. It's personal.
6. The final truth. Here's the truth most people miss. Saving money was never really about becoming rich. It was about becoming different. Different in how you think before you act. Different in how you choose when no one is watching. Different in what you tolerate and what you refuse to accept. Because something changes the moment you experience what it feels like to not be controlled by money. Not reacting to every expense. Not stressing over every bill. Not making decisions out of fear, but out of clarity. And once you feel that, even briefly, you realize something powerful. Freedom isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the absence of pressure, the absence of urgency, the absence of that constant weight in the back of your mind. And once that weight is gone, you can't go back. You can't unsee it. You can't return to living on edge like it's normal. But here's the reality. Most people never reach this point. Not because they can't earn more, not because they lack opportunity, but because they never shift how they think. They keep upgrading their income, but not their mindset. They build bigger lives, but not stronger foundations. So they stay stuck in the same patterns, just at a higher level. And that's the real trap. Because from the outside, it looks like success. But on the inside, nothing has changed. That's why the real upgrade was never financial. It was psychological. It was learning how to think without pressure, how to choose without fear, how to live without constantly proving something. Because in the end, money doesn't change your life. It changes how you experience your life. And if you understand that, you stop chasing numbers and start building something far more valuable, a mind that no longer depends on them. So next time you check your balance, don't just look at the number. Ask yourself, what is this changing in me? Because the difference between staying stuck and building real financial freedom isn't just how much you save, it's how much you evolve. If this made you see money differently, take a second, like the video, subscribe, and comment one thing: level up. Because once you understand this, you're not just saving money anymore. You're building a new mind. And that's where real wealth begins.